Hello and welcome to another episode of Qwizical's Guide to with me, Qwizical, and today we will be looking at bonus or no bonus. Now you can't win any money at the end of this video, sorry Noel Edmonds, but we will be hopefully answering a really important question in Scrabble. Bonus or no bonus? You might be thinking, why is this an important concept? Why do I need to know whether to not bonus, because surely you always bonus? Well, sometimes you may come across a scenario where the bonus isn't actually the right move, and that can be for a number of reasons that we will discuss in the two examples that I'm going to give. They might not be the best examples, but they are examples nonetheless. So let's get on with them. So our first example here I observed on ISC recently, and this case actually had the player not bonusing. So why did they not bonus? It's quite possible that they didn't bonus because they felt like it probably wasn't worth bonusing for some weird reason. Interestingly, they play ew here for 35. You might be thinking, yeah, they're keeping the blank, it's nice and balanced, there's tons of E's left. But what if I said there's a bonus that scores 82 points? So you've got, let's pull this back, you've got re-endow to score 82 points. There's no S's in the pool, so there's not really a risk of that. Of course you are ahead, so bonusing, as well as playing 7 tiles, getting your extra 50 points. Bonusing also empties the tile bag quicker. And when you're ahead by 150, like this player is, your real aim is to keep the board tighter so that your opponent can't catch up, but at the same time you want to play more tiles because your opponent needs those tiles to catch up. If your opponent needs 2 bonuses to overtake you, they're going to need 2 bonuses. There's no other way about that. So if you play 7 tiles, or 5 to 7 tiles all the time, the tile pool is just going to diminish to the point where they can no longer get those 2 bonuses because they're trying to pick up the right tiles to bonus and play that bonus. And sometimes that's not always possible. So in this scenario, playing a non-bonus is actually a pretty bad idea, and I would advise against that because when you've got 70 plus, 80 plus bonuses available, you should never really be turning those down in favour of something a lot more inferior, especially considering the placement and the tile pool, which are 2 of the most important aspects. So our second example is this game that I was alerted to by my wonderful Facebook community. I love you guys. And this is an example where playing the bonus may not necessarily be the best idea. So why is it not such a good idea? Well, in this scenario, the best bonuses here are along row 9, so over here. There's really nowhere else to play your bonus, and there's no other places to really score them. So row 9 gets 60 something points. It's a really low scoring bonus, especially considering the nice tiles of your rack. Of course, what I said before still applies. You want to get ahead, you want to get 100, the bonus would still get you 110 ahead. But at the same time, do you favour those points over the defence? Because what a bonus would do, so something like Entasia, what that bonus does is open the board up to a point where it's really, really hard to close it down. And when you lose control of a board, it's much harder to stop your opponent getting those points back. So if we fast forward in this game, Entasia gets 61 points, especially with Q, X and Y unseen. there's now an X hotspot, and a lot of things can go wrong. And it's quite possible that playing a non-bonus, like just playing your 2A's over here, in hope for maybe something that comes off the D, or maybe something else, it's completely fine because you're controlling the board, you're ahead, and those things are really important. So, if we fast forward, luckily the player that played Entasius still managed to win, but it's quite possible that it still could have backfired, in the sense that it was such an open position that it's quite possible that it would have given, say, a double back with the X or the Q, and that would have just made the scores level. And sometimes your pickups can go horribly wrong when you make decisions like this. So perhaps weighing up the risk and the reward is some of the most important things that you can do when you're trying to think about whether a bonus is actually the best play. Sometimes your bonus might open up a 9 timer, and you've got to weigh up what's left in the pool versus what is likely to be played, where the positioning of the word is, where, what letter is between the triples, and you've got to think about whether it's worth playing that bonus for maybe 60 points and then possibly giving away 130 because you were just so obsessed with playing the bonus. So let's try and summarise that all now, because there's quite a lot to digest. Point number 1, what are the scores? Both examples I showed were of players who were ahead when they needed to play their bonus. Of course, there are examples when you're behind, but when you're behind, you need to bonus, so you can't really judge that kind of scenario, because when you're behind, you need the points, and you need them now. Whereas when you're ahead, it's perfectly acceptable to sacrifice points for the sake of point number 4. These points might be in a slightly dodgy order, but whatever, which is defense and offense. So you may decide to take a less offensive bonus if it means that it gives away fewer bonus lanes to your opponent. Or you may decide that the bonus that you play is just far too open. You don't want to open up triples, you don't want to open up a power tile hotspot, you just want to play something that just gets you the points and doesn't do any of that, and maybe even keeping a blank if that's what you've got. Point number 2, because I'm jumping around a lot, what stage of the game is it? Later in the game, there are fewer tiles to be played, so turning down a bonus, especially if you're ahead by, say, 50 points, it's not the worst thing in the world to turn it down, because what you're able to do is to plan a lot more and predict what your opponent can do in reply to that bonus, and it's a lot easier to decide whether playing the bonus will be advantageous to you or advantageous to your opponent. On the flip side, if you're thinking about whether to play the bonus at the start or the middle of the game, you should generally always play it, because the likelihood of your opponent having those letters that they need to completely maximise it is a lot less, and you've still got the majority of the game left to go. So you don't really need to think too much about being defensive or offensive, because it's just the stage of the game where you want to try and rack up those points and try and gain control. Point number 3, what's the tile pool? I've already talked a little bit about the tile pool, but in particular what you should focus on in the tile pool is the vowel to consonant ratio, the power tiles that are left, what power tiles, just what tiles are left, how bonus friendly are they. You may think, Jess, this is a video on bonusing or not bonusing, why do I have to care about the tile pool? Well, it's quite possible that sometimes bonusing may mean you take all the last tiles out the bag, and one of those tiles is an unplayable Q. And you don't want to get Q stuck. So you've got to think about the pool, because that can really affect your chances of winning. And that's really important. If you play your bonus or you don't play your bonus, can you still win? Which is point number 5. I'm jumping around all over the place. This is awesome. But there's so much to think about when you're playing a bonus, particularly at the end of the game, which is what this kind of guides video is focusing on. It's particularly interesting to think about whether bonuses are the right thing at the end of the game, where maybe scores are close, or maybe there's just a bigger risk of something. And it's really important to think about what's the worst case scenario that can happen if I play my bonus. Because for people like me, that worst case scenario is a reality. So if I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do this because there's like a 1 in 16 chance my opponent's gonna have the right letters for this. My opponent's gonna have the right letters. That's just my opponents. They're just horrible like that. They don't give me a break. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. And I will see you next time for more of Qwizical's guides. Bye!